What if I told you that the fastest growing city in the entire United States is a place most Americans have never heard of? Not Austin, not Phoenix, not some tech hub on the West Coast, a small town in Texas, where just a few years ago there were two stoplights and you had to drive past cows and open pastures just to buy groceries. That town is Princeton, Texas, and according to the U.S. Census Bureau, it just made history. Between July 2023 and July 2024 alone, Princeton's population exploded by 30.6% in a single year. That's not a typo. Nearly one-third of an entire city's population added in 12 months. Since 2020, the population has more than doubled, going from roughly 17,000 people to over 37,000 residents today. So what is happening in this quiet corner of North Texas? Why are families packing up their lives and racing toward a town most people still can't find on a map? Today, we're going inside Princeton, Texas, and we're going to tell you the full story. The growth, the opportunity, the challenges, and what this one small town tells us about the bigger changes reshaping America. Stay with me, because this story is more fascinating than you think. The town nobody knew, from farming fields to America's #1 boom town. To understand what Princeton, Texas is becoming, you first have to understand what it was. Princeton sits in Collin County, about 46 miles northeast of downtown Dallas. For most of its history, it was the kind of place you drove through, not the kind of place you drove to. The town traces its roots back to the 1870s, when two brothers named T.B. Wilson and George Wilson began farming near what would later become the town site. When the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas Railroad came through in 1881, the area got its first real identity, though residents were forced to rename it when they discovered Wilson was already taken as a post office name. They settled on Princeton in honor of a local landowner named Prince Dowlin. For over a century, Princeton remained small, quiet, and deeply agricultural. Onion farming was such a big part of local life that the town still holds an annual onion festival every April, a tradition that's been running since 2005. But something happened in the 2020s that changed everything. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, already one of the largest and most dynamic urban regions in America, started running out of room, or more precisely, it started running out of affordable room. Cities like Plano, Frisco, and McKinney had grown into high-priced suburban powerhouses. A typical home in McKinney today runs over $500,000. In Frisco, you're looking at $685,000 or more. Families, particularly those in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, wanted the Texas lifestyle. Good weather, no state income tax, strong job markets, space for their kids. But they couldn't afford the established suburbs anymore, and that's when they found Princeton. The typical home in Princeton? Around $325,000. You can still find newly built homes advertised along the main road, US Route 380, starting at just $200,000. For families being priced out of neighboring cities, Princeton wasn't just affordable, it was a lifeline. Princeton Mayor Eugene Escobar put it simply, it's affordability. That's really the driving factor. And the numbers tell the story. Princeton has already added twice as many homes between 2020 and 2023 as it did in the entire previous decade. Sprawling single-family subdivisions, apartment buildings, and townhomes have sprouted across land that was farmland just a few years ago. The numbers that made the nation pay attention. According to the U.S. Census Bureau's official vintage 2024 estimates released in May 2025, Princeton, Texas was the fastest-growing city in America, increasing its population by nearly one-third in a single year and more than doubling it since 2020, from roughly 17,000 to 37,000 residents. Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't a city that was already big and kept growing. This is a town that was small, rural, and largely unknown, and then it erupted. 5 of the 15 fastest-growing cities in the country are located in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. And of the 15 fastest-growing cities nationally, 7 are in Texas: Princeton, Fulshear, Salina, Anna, Fate, Melissa, and Hutto. Texas isn't just growing, it's dominating the national growth story. But even within that extraordinary Texas boom, Princeton stands alone at the top. What life looks like. There now. Mayor Escobar has been watching Princeton transform in real time. When he first moved to the area over a decade ago, there were just 2 stoplights and residents had to shop in the next town over. Princeton now has several stoplights and a Walmart. That might not sound dramatic if you live in a big city, but for longtime Princeton residents, it represents a world turned upside down. When Escobar moved in 2013, he could drive to neighboring McKinney in 5 minutes. Today, it takes about 20 minutes, and where there used to be farmland behind his house, there are now rows of homes. Nobody expected this to be Princeton, the mayor said. The social fabric of the town is changing too. Princeton is no longer a place where everybody knows everybody. New families from across Texas and beyond are arriving every month, bringing different backgrounds, different expectations, and different needs. The school district is feeling the pressure perhaps more than anyone else. Princeton ISD opened 2 new elementary schools and adopted a 2024-2025 school year budget that increased expenditures by 15% to $144.6 million. At the start of that school year, there were 9,141 students, nearly 1,000 more than just the year before. The district has laid out a long-range plan to keep up with demand. By 2034, enrollment is projected to reach nearly 19,574 students. To meet this surge, the district is building 8 new campuses, including 2 new elementary schools opening in fall 2026. Despite the strain, the school district maintains an A rating on niche, with a 96% graduation rate. For parents moving out of the expensive Dallas core, that combination of quality and affordability is nearly impossible to resist. Before we move into part 2, I want to take a quick moment. If you're finding this video valuable, please hit that subscribe button right now. We cover stories just like this one. Real American towns, real economic shifts, and what they mean for everyday families. You don't want to miss what's coming next on this channel. Hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, and it means the world to us. All right, let's keep going. Because while Princeton's growth story is remarkable, what's happening behind the scenes is even more interesting. Growing pains and the road ahead. When growth outpaces everything else. There's a saying in city planning, infrastructure doesn't build itself. Roads, water pipes, sewage systems, fire stations, police departments, these things take time and money to build. And when a city doubles its population in 5 years, the gap between what exists and what's needed can become a serious crisis. Princeton is living through that crisis right now. Growth came so quickly that the city has struggled to build roads and infrastructure fast enough as it transforms from a farming community. The situation became serious enough that city leaders took dramatic action. The Princeton City Council approved a moratorium on new residential housing projects, citing the rapid growth that had put a strain on public resources like water, sewage, roads, and emergency services. The moratorium was extended multiple times as city officials worked through the backlog. Think about what that means. The fastest growing city in America had to pause its own growth just to catch its breath. But city officials are careful to frame this not as a retreat, but as a strategic reset. City manager Michael Mashburn explained, "We are always trying to ensure that we have not just entry-level housing, but also homes that people graduate into as their income level increases and their family expands. We should have a wide array of housing stock to ensure that any and all people can live in Princeton and call it home in the future." The city is also investing massively in its physical foundation. Princeton plans to invest $49 million in utility infrastructure over the next 7 years, in addition to $296 million in broader capital improvements throughout the city, including parks, utilities, and other areas. And they're using cutting-edge tools to prioritize where that money goes. The city recently engaged a company that uses AI and infrared technology to analyze every street and utility line, identifying what is most likely to fail first, so repairs can be made proactively rather than reactively. That's a level of data-driven planning that many much larger cities haven't yet adopted. The traffic problem. Nobody wants to talk about. Ask any longtime Princeton resident what's changed most, and after they mention the new houses, they'll mention the traffic. U.S. Route 380, the main artery running through Princeton, was never built to handle the volume of vehicles it now carries every single day. Commuters heading toward McKinney or Dallas sit in backups that didn't exist 5 years ago. Mayor Escobar acknowledged the situation directly. "We have a bypass that's about to be built, and they're expanding Highway 380 this summer. It's going to make traffic worse during construction, but at the end of it, it should be better." The honest acknowledgement from city leadership is actually one of Princeton's strengths. Rather than pretending the problems don't exist, officials are making them public and explaining their plans. That kind of transparency builds trust, and trust is exactly what a rapidly expanding community needs to hold itself together. The retail revolution coming to Princeton. For years, one of the biggest complaints about Princeton was the lack of shopping, dining, and entertainment options. Residents would drive 20 to 30 minutes to McKinney or Allen just to go to a decent restaurant or a specialty store. That's beginning to change in a major way. The Princeton Town Center, slated to begin construction in 2025, will feature more than 35 national retailers. Local developers have also been breaking ground on additional shopping centers, further expanding the city's retail and dining base. For a community that spent decades watching its residents drive elsewhere to spend their money, this is a transformation that carries deep symbolic as well as economic significance. When a town gets its own town center, it starts to feel like a real town. What this means for the broader America: Princeton, Texas isn't just a local story. It's a mirror reflecting some of the biggest forces reshaping the United States right now. First, the affordability crisis. Princeton's explosive growth is, at its core, a story about housing costs. When major metropolitan areas become too expensive for middle-class families, those families find the next affordable option. Princeton was that option for Dallas-Fort Worth. The same pattern is playing out in cities across the country, and it will continue as long as housing in core metros remains out of reach. Second, the Texas advantage. Texas continues to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of interstate migration. No state income tax. A business-friendly regulatory environment, a relatively lower cost of living compared to California or the Northeast, and a culture that still values space, community, and the idea that hard work can get you a home with a yard. Of the 15 fastest-growing cities in the nation, 7 are in Texas alone. That statistic is not an accident. Third, the suburban reinvention. For a generation, suburbs became a dirty word in American discourse. Young people were supposed to want urban cores, walkable neighborhoods, transit access, density. But what we're actually seeing in the data is that when families grow and priorities shift, particularly for people in their 40s and 50s, the suburban model has enormous appeal. Good schools, bigger homes, safer streets, community events like the annual Onion Festival. Princeton is not a relic of the past. It's a preview of where a lot of American families are heading, the small town that refused to disappear. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Princeton is not how fast it's growing, but how hard its leaders are fighting to preserve what makes it worth living in. Mayor Escobar has repeatedly emphasized his commitment to maintaining Princeton's small-town feel, even as it races toward 50,000 residents and beyond. City Manager Mashburn articulated an ambitious vision. "I really want Princeton to be a roadmap, where people ask questions about resident engagement and participation and our strategies for managing extreme growth. I want Princeton to be on the map as an example for smaller cities and towns to come to us and learn about how they can grow the way Princeton has grown." That's not just civic pride talking. That's a genuine challenge, and a genuinely important one, because growth without identity is just sprawl. Growth without community is just construction. The cities that survive their booms are the ones that figure out how to grow and stay themselves at the same time. Princeton is trying, and whether it succeeds will be one of the most interesting small city stories in America over the next decade. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who cares about understanding what's really happening in America, beyond the headlines, beyond the noise. This channel is built for people like you, so if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that subscribe button below. We drop new videos regularly, and every single one is designed to give you the full picture, not just the soundbite. So there it is. Princeton, Texas, a town built on onion fields and railroad tracks that became, almost overnight, the fastest growing city in the United States. It happened because of affordability, because of location, because of the relentless pull of the Dallas-Fort Worth dream. And because thousands of ordinary American families looked at their options and decided that a little town they'd never heard of was exactly the kind of place they wanted to call home. Is Princeton perfect? Absolutely not. The roads are congested. The infrastructure is scrambling to catch up. The schools are bursting at the seams. Growth always creates problems along with opportunities. But what's happening in Princeton tells us something important about where America is going, about where families want to live, about what people are willing to leave behind, and what they're hoping to find. If you found this video interesting, please share it with someone who would appreciate it. Maybe a friend who's thinking about relocating, maybe someone who follows real estate or economic trends, maybe just someone who likes a good American story. And before you go, drop a comment below. Have you been to Princeton? Are you considering moving to Texas? Or do you think a town growing this fast is headed for serious problems? I want to hear your perspective. Subscribe, comment, share. That's what keeps this channel going, and it's what brings more stories like this one to your screen. Until next time, thank you for watching.